This Norman Powell trade not only is massive for the Miami Heat, but it's also massive for the LA Clippers, and it kind of shows the direction that they're going in. Norman Powell had a not historic, but he had his best season last year. A lot of people argue that he should have been an all-star. I'm one of those people, especially when you see what happened with LeBron James. Norman Powell was a cog in a machine that was the LA Clippers that, especially towards the end of the year, you can say competed for and was in the running for a championship. And on a natural day, Norman Powell getting traded wouldn't really move the needle. But the reason why I'm starting this episode with that is because not only does this spell big change for the Clippers, it also shows you which direction they're going and moving forward without essentially telling you what they're doing. This move, surprisingly, is centered around Bradley Beal. I think I have to set some things straight real quick. No, Bradley Beal didn't have the greatest of seasons last year with the Phoenix Suns. But Bradley Beal didn't have a bad season. I talk about this a lot, man. Once you get a big contract, and it also goes back to expectation. Once you get a big contract and you have expectations not only attached to that contract, but attached to the team that you're going to or you're on, your play is going to be put under a microscope more than anything. And the fact that Bradley Beal and the Phoenix Suns had huge hopes, even though I told people from the beginning, I don't consider, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker an essential big three because they all do the same things. Not one of them highlights what another one doesn't do. So you just have three players that essentially play the same exact role. Obviously, one or two is better than the other, but still. But in the grand scheme of things, Bradley Beal didn't have a terrible season as a player. But when you attach the contract and when you attach the fact that there was high hopes for the Phoenix Suns, that's when you can say, all right, Bradley Beal didn't have the greatest of seasons. I think it's about role. If you play your role and the team has the perfect role for you, I think Bradley Beal can still flourish. And the trade of Norman Powell is not only just the fact that Norman Powell was traded, but his contract was traded and his importance to in offense. Because don't get me wrong, I know that James Harden was important and Kawhi Leonard was important, but Norman Powell was uber important to that Clippers offense last year. Hence why a lot of people say that he should be an all-star. But this trade, obviously it was a 3-team trade. It was the Heat, it was the Jazz, and it was the Clippers. The Heat, I know the Jazz got Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson. They're probably going to get waived. So I don't know what's in store for them moving forward. But what this shows is two teams that are moving in two different directions in a sense of almost every single time since Bradley Beal was in Washington, almost every single time you heard about Bradley Beal and a move for Bradley Beal, the one destination that constantly came up was the Miami Heat. And Understandably so. Even at the time, Miami did look like a perfect destination for Bradley Beal. And even now, obviously, we're talking about it because of the Norman Powell trade, but before the trade, it still looked like a perfect piece. Even though I don't think that makes them a championship caliber team. I don't think Norman Powell makes them a championship caliber team, but it is a good spot because Bradley Beal would take the reins as essentially the best player. You can say it's Tyler Hero, you can say it's Bam. I think at each person's point of their career, again, I understand that Bradley Beal is looked at a little differently because of his contract and because of the year he had with that contract. But I still think Bradley Beal is good enough to be the best player on a team. I'm not saying that team is a championship caliber team, but we have seen Bradley Beal be the best player. But this Norman Powell trade changes that. Bradley Beal has all, and I literally mean all, the power in this situation because of that no trade clause. I know Washington was the one that gave it to him, but again, I think that there is a select few people in sports in general that deserve a no trade clause. Now, I would like everyone. Let me back up. I would like everyone to get a no trade clause because that essentially means that you have the final say so of where a team trades you. Obviously, that is unrealistic, but if that were the case, that would be great, but it's not. And because it's not, it gives certain players like, do you know the only two people that comes to mind right now that has a no trade clause in the NBA is LeBron James. I think, three people. LeBron James, I believe Nikola Jokic, and Bradley Beal. Now, there may be more, but those are the three that I can think of on the top of my head. That means Bradley Beal is in that class, which is crazy. But Bradley Beal has all the leverage because of that no trade clause. You can say, hey, Brad, we want to send you to here, and he can be like, nah. That's kind of why KD was traded. Bradley Beal's no trade clause is why Kevin Durant was traded. I know that, it was reports that Phoenix didn't want him, but the only reason why Phoenix didn't want to keep that Kevin Durant is because of money and because the fact of we're going to talk about that second apron a little bit later in the show, but that second apron is a killer. And when you have essentially three players that make up 85% of your payroll and your roster, that's not going to bode well for a team, especially a team that gets swept in the first round of the playoffs. But I say all this to say, the Heat trading for Norman Powell essentially takes them out of the Bradley Beal conversation. One thing that we have not really been able to say, even with Bradley Beal coming or going to Phoenix, there was a sense that if this doesn't work out, the number one destination would be Miami. Well, you getting Norman Powell and especially the contract that's attached to Norman Powell, the Heat are essentially out. And I know the Clippers got John Collins in that deal, but he doesn't cost nearly as much as Norman Powell cost. Which brings me to the Clippers. One thing that we know is there are always deals. I'm not going to call them under the table deals, but the NBA, sports in general, whatever league you're in, is a fraternity, meaning each team talks to another team, even if they're not supposed to. And you can call it tampering, but this Norman Powell trade is it's almost like a green reflecting light saying, oh, no, we know that we're getting Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal has been in contract talks working out a buyout with the Suns, meaning he's probably going to be a free agent soon. And it's no coincidence that now you're hearing the number one destination for Bradley Beal could be the Clippers. And my question is, does this make the Clippers an essential championship caliber team? It's very unfortunate for the Clippers that they're not in the East right now, because I would for sure say yes if they were in the East. But this can be considered. I'm not saying it's instantly going to make them a better team than, I don't know, the Thunder or the Heat right now. Or not the Heat, or the Rockets right now. But this is the definition of a big three. James Harden, Bradley Beal, Kawhi Leonard. Because each player, as great as they are, do things exceptional that the other player may not do. James Harden when it comes to his assists. Kawhi Leonard when it comes to his defense. And Bradley Beal when it comes essentially to just his pure scoring. I'm very interested to see. Now, obviously, this is all speculation, and it may or may not happen. But when you trade someone like Norman Powell, who was your essentially second or third best player when you look at the totality of the season, and just so happens that his contract and the space that it leaves fits someone like Bradley Beal perfectly, the writing's on the wall, you know? So I think Norman Powell will be great in Miami. Again, I definitely don't think this makes them a championship caliber team. And you can argue if Miami is a better situation for Norman Powell than the Clippers, because Norman Powell is a player that needs the ball in his hand and that thrives when the offense is centered on him. I don't know if that's going to be the case, obviously, when you have Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo and Andrew Wiggins, but I do think that Norman Powell thrived when he was on the court and James Harden was not. And that's no offense to Powell or James Harden, but Norman Powell is one of those players that he needs to be the one that has the ball in his hand for him to play at his best. Or when one of the big two was out, meaning if Norman Powell was on the floor with James Harden but Kawhi Leonard was out, Norman Powell would thrive. If Kawhi Leonard was in the game and not James Harden, Norman Powell would thrive. You know, he's not, even though he's the third best player, essentially, or was the third best player on that team, he thrived when he had more offensive, a bigger offensive workload. So I'm excited to see what happens. And again, the reason why I started this episode with this is because this essentially means Bradley Beal, whenever he gets the buyout secure, he's going to the Clippers. If something changes, we'll talk about it, but that's essentially what that means. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.